What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes coming at you with another contest prep update vlog. So this is all about week 15. Crazy that we're already 15 weeks in, but let's dive into it. So I've got, as far as macros go, we are kind of continuing that phase 2. Remember, based off of my prep protocol, phase 2 is going to be increasing protein to find my own unique protein threshold while simultaneously dropping fat. So in 2020, when I did my prep, the highest I got on protein was 200 grams. That's pretty much where I hit my threshold. That's where we're at this week in week 15. I'm probably going to keep pushing it a little bit further because I've got a longer prep this go around, and I kind of want to push the envelope to see what my body is capable of. But diving into the macros here, we have got 140 grams of dietary fat, 200 grams of protein, and 15 grams of total carbs. All right, so that is going to yield 2,120 calories. So we are still over the 2,000 calorie mark, but we are not going to be over the 2,000 calorie mark for long. As far as cardio goes, I was still traveling during this point in the week. I was coming back from the family reunion that we had in Oregon. We didn't get back until late Wednesday, so I pretty much did cardio on Monday. I did 20 minutes at level 14, and then I trained at a gym that I found a day pass to on Tuesday, and then I did 20 minutes level 14 of cardio on the Stairmaster on Wednesday, and then I trained every day thereafter. As far as my weight goes, I wasn't able to weigh in until I got back home, weighed in on Thursday morning at 166.5, which is technically above what the, quote-unquote goal weight was of 166.1. But for me, having traveled for 2 weeks, been driving in a vehicle, had poor AC, poor circulation, a whole bunch of edema in my legs from fluid retention, from just driving and not sleeping, that's pretty good. And then after a couple days, that water retention flushed out, and I was coming in at 165.1, which is technically below the goal target weight of 165.6. So I still feel really, really good about where my weight is at thus far in the prep. At that macro intake, my ratio is 59.4% of my calories coming from dietary fat. So as I've said in the past, I'm an advocate for a higher fat approach with a ketogenic diet for a multitude of reasons. If you are doing a ketogenic diet, then the goal is to optimize for fat metabolism. That's kind of what the ketogenic diet is by definition. So if that is the primary goal and you're trying to optimize for fat metabolism, whether it is your dietary fat or your stored body fat, then it stands to reason that the greater percentage of your total calories needs to be coming from fat. I'm probably going to have a whole bunch of people rip me a new one on that statement right there because they're going to be like, oh, if you've got body fat to lose, then you don't need to be eating much plate fat, use fat as a lever, yada, yada, yada. I've heard it all. I'm going to be leaner than all the haters, so I'm just going to kind of throw that out there and say this is what I'm doing. It's working pretty well, so I'm going to keep doing it. But that puts me at 59.4% on the ratios. Now, that is still a majority of my total calories coming from dietary fat from a caloric standpoint. From a gram standpoint, obviously, I've got 140 grams of fat, 200 grams of protein, but when you consider the fact that there's much more of a caloric load to fat in grams than protein, that's why I've got the higher percentage of calories still coming from the dietary fat. So that's kind of what my macro ratios look like there. When it comes to the foods, I did something a little bit interesting this week, so let's look at that. So I have been doing 3 tablespoons of this like nut pod roasted marshmallow creamer in my coffee. I'm pretty much doing 1 or 2 cups of coffee. 3 tablespoons is not much in there, but it's better than half a tablespoon of heavy cream because it gives me a little bit more to cut the coffee. I don't really like black coffee. My meal 1 is continuing to be that full chocolate peanut butter cup keto brick. And then my meal 2 was this kind of baked dish that we made. So it had 4 eggs in it, 4 whole eggs, 4 ounces of organic ground turkey, 4 ounces of a 93.7 ground beef, 14 ounces of a canned wild salmon, and then 3 ounces of crab meat. And that's obviously very high protein, 164 grams of protein, 48 grams of fat in that meal. We put it all in a dish and pretty much baked it. and it kind of made like a casserole, which was nice from a texture standpoint, a little bit different texture than what I had been doing previously. But I did it like that with the separation between the brick and that meal on Monday. And I don't know if it was because I was driving. I don't know if it's because I had slammed an energy drink because I was driving and I had a lot more to drive. But the combination of that super high protein meal and the energy drink and the driving did not sit well on my gut at all, and I actually threw up. So a couple different variables there. Maybe I'm nearing my threshold from a GI standpoint. I did definitely experience a lot more bloat with that meal. So that kind of gives me some insight that I may be nearing a threshold. Now, I will say that my blood ketones have been significantly dropping as the protein's been getting higher. My blood glucose has stayed relatively stable because I'm not eating any carbs. And as I continue to increase the protein, I'll likely experience some increase in blood glucose. I am planning on putting a CGM in the next week or so I kind of see what that data looks like. And I'm not overly concerned with these glucose and ketone numbers, but I do like to gather the data just because I'm curious. So in light of me having that GI distress, what I've been doing here lately is I'll actually combine that and have an OMAD approach. So I don't typically do OMAD until I get below 2,000 calories, but I went ahead and started doing OMAD the remainder of this week, and I responded really, really well to it. I felt satiated after that meal. I felt like I was totally fueled for the next day's workout. I wasn't overly hungry. There was not really any issues in that regard. So I feel pretty good about that. So the macros have been the same, but I've condensed it, like I said, and I've done the OMAD approach. And when it comes to OMAD in a cut, there's a couple things I want to say here. So OMAD, increasing your fasting window via OMAD, there's pros and cons to it. If I'm in a building phase, if I'm in a caloric surplus, if I'm trying to push the calories, if I'm trying to eat protein multiple times throughout the day to activate muscle protein synthesis, I'm not going to be recommending an OMAD approach. However, that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm in a competition prep. I'm trying to maximize muscle retention and optimize fat loss. So I'm not really worried about having multiple muscle protein synthesis mTOR spikes throughout the day. I'm going to get ample protein, which I am with these macros right now. I'm going to have a great training session. I'm going to have a longer fasting window. And from a psychological standpoint, I'm going to actually feel full when I have that big meal. And that, to me, is the main reason I find benefit in OMAD at this point in a prep. It's much better for me to feel truly satiated once than to have like multiple smaller meals throughout the day that always leave me wanting more and never satisfy me. From a psychological standpoint, that makes this much more sustainable, and I just enjoy it that much more, and I feel better. So yeah, that's what I'm doing from a macro standpoint and from a meal standpoint. One other little thing that I want to talk about. Chip, can you give me that can of Zen? All right, so this is one thing I kind of want to talk about from a supplement standpoint. It's Zen. Let me make a quick disclaimer. I'm not recommending anybody jump on and take a bunch of nicotine. I am most certainly not recommending anybody use smoking, dipping, snuffing, or vaping as a delivery vehicle for nicotine. In isolation, let's talk about nicotine in isolation. I've read several studies on this stuff. Huberman recently put out a great podcast on nicotine. Nicotine, which is what this Zen is, this is a 3 milligram pouch, it's a legitimate appetite suppressant, and it also can kind of provide a little bit of a dopamine bump and focus with some slight energy. So think of it kind of like caffeine. You wouldn't want to overdo caffeine, just as you wouldn't want to overdo, an isolated nicotine supplement. I had some. I've never had these before in my life prior to this week, but I had my brother-in-law at the family reunion had some of these. Bad influence on me, I guess. And he gave me one, and I had it to focus. I wanted to see what it would if I could increase my focus at all. So I had one, and then I had it driving, and I was able to kind of like feel a little bit more alert while I was driving back home from Oregon. So that was a plus. It does have an appetite suppressant effect, which is why a lot of people have a hard time stopping to smoke because they don't want to put the weight gain on with smoking. All of the studies that link, cancer and tobacco and nicotine are because it's tobacco as a delivery vehicle. So if you're smoking, vaping, snuffing, dipping, that's literally the worst thing you can do for your health. Like 50-fold increase in cancer rate, not good at all. Any of the minute benefits that you would get from nicotine in that instance are far outweighed by all the negatives of tobacco. So don't do that. This does not have tobacco. This is just simply pure nicotine. It's sweetened with L-sulfate and potassium. It's got less than 10 grams of calories per pouch. I think it's like less than 1 calorie per pouch, actually. So it gets my mind off of food. I can put one of those in, and it's kind of like chewing gum. If I wasn't addicted to chewing gum, I'd probably chew gum. But there was a point in my life where I was chewing gum, like 4 packs of gum a day during the prep. I was a chain chewer. And those calories and sweeteners add up. So I don't really want to go back to chewing 4 packs of gum a day. So I pretty much gave up gum cold turkey, and I haven't had gum for the past several years. So I tried that, and I'll do like 2 or 3 of those a day if I'm driving or doing emails or something like that I want to focus on and just take my mind off of food. Again, you certainly don't have to do that. It's not going to be a massive decrease in your appetite. It's not going to be a massive increase in your energy or focus. It's just something I've been playing around with. I am not advocating for tobacco use. Certainly, I'm not even advocating for nicotine use. It's just a supplement that I'm trying out, and I'm going to be full disclosure with y'all there. Now, that's pretty much what I got to say as far as the macros go, as far as the meals go that I'm using to hit those macros, the OMAD approach. Let's now dive into some updated posing footage. Pretty excited about this one. So here we got the front relaxed. Again, the pictures and videos don't really do what I'm seeing in the mirror justice, and I kind of messed up my foot placement with this one a little bit. I'm trying some new posing techniques, and I haven't committed all this to memory yet, but you can see a lot more separation in my hamstrings, a lot more separation in my quads, between my quads and hamstrings, and I'm getting much more dialed in week to week to week as the pictures go. All right, going into the muscular rounds here after this pose, we've got I'm trying to move my foot a little bit for these front poses, so I'm kicking one foot out, kind of putting most of the weight on my back foot, doing my front lat spread, front double bicep here, and I'm just seeing a lot more definition. You can kind of see a little bit more vascularity in the lats from the front, which is a good sign. A lot more separation between the quads and the hamstrings here in the side poses. A lot more striations come through in the chest when I do my side chest and side tricep poses. The skin on my arms is getting paper thin, so I'm getting a lot more vascularity in my arms, which is also exciting to see. And then doing these lat poses here, these back poses, rear lat spread, you can see vascularity in my lats now. You can see that Christmas tree kind of starting to come out in the lower back. And you just see things dialing in, like the shoulder caps. The skin on my shoulder caps is much more paper thin. The posing coach I'm working with actually prefers my left side chest and side tricep, which is funny to me because I've never preferred my left side. So I'll try and get that dialed in, see if I can get those poses, kind of tweaked a little bit here. Going into, what do I got? Hands overhead abdominal thigh. Another front double bicep here. So we're doing that. Got my signature pose, and then knowing some most musculars here. I'm starting to see some vascularity like in my chest and in my abdominals. You're not really going to see that in the video here, but I'm starting to see veins in my abs, which is usually a pretty good sign. There's the hands overhead abdominal thigh, and then finishing with the hands grasping most muscular and the crab most muscular here. So that there, ladies and gents, is the updated posing footage. Now, I got some exciting things in the works for this next video. We'll talk about all this next week, but I did get my labs scheduled, so I've got some updated blood work coming your way. I got an updated DEXA scan coming your way, full-blown pictures, measurements, caliper test, InBody scan, and DEXA scan. So we're really going to see what the body fat is next week along with the blood work. So all exciting stuff for the next video. This is what it is for week 15 with the OMAD and the change in macros and the addition of the Zen supplementation. So, hope you all enjoy it. Thank y'all for supporting and tuning in. We'll catch you next time.